Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. So I've just jumped on today to do my weekly forecast as usual, but before we get started, I would just like to apologise for my absence last week. I did have to spend a couple of days in hospital, so I wasn't available last weekend to do the forecast, but I should be back to normal from this weekend going forwards. And before we get started, I will just draw your guys' attention to the written version of this forecast this week. So this written version will be linked in the description. So if you guys want the written version of this forecast, then just check out the link in the video description. Alright guys, and if you're appreciative of this content, then please do like the video and subscribe to the channel. So let's get started. So Nzdusd. Looking at the daily, what we've got is breaker structure, bearish. So based on this bearish breaker structure, we know that we're looking for sells. What we've also got as a confluence for the bearishness on this pair is we've got momentum bearish, so that move down happened in 15 or 18 days, depending on how you look at it. And then the move back up has taken just over 35 days maybe. So we know that we've got bearish momentum and we've also got a bearish breaker structure. So based on that, for me, we are looking at the bearish bias on Nzdusd. Now, in terms of where to sell from, we've got this clear order block here, which is the extreme origin that caused this whole move bearish. That also has clear imbalance. So based on that, I do think that this is a pretty decent order block, and we could definitely see the sells coming in out of this order block. Alright, so for me, overall on this pair, I'm definitely mostly interested in sells, and that's just following with that daily bearish bias, and hopefully we'll take out all the liquidity below all these lows that they built up on the way back there. So the start of next week, what I'll really be looking at is like the 1 hour, the 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour, see how those structures are changing, and once we start to see that flip on the 1 hour, then I'll be looking to take sells away from this daily area up here. But I do think that sells at any time from this point are now valid with the stop loss above the southeast invalidation point. So that's the first thing on Nzdusd. Now, what I'm also going to be aware of is what's happening on the 4 hour at the minute. So for me, the daily does take priority, just like we saw with my previous forecast on Euro Dollar. The 4 hours in a bullish structure, but the daily took priority and the daily followed through. So again, I am expecting the daily to follow through because it is the higher time frame, but I will still be aware of what's going on the 4 hour because we might get some good buying opportunities on the 4 hour if we are going to violate this overall daily structure. So looking at the current 4 hour structure now and ignoring what's going on the daily, we've got a breaker structure to the high after this big liquidity grab move here. Now, if we look, the breaker structure of the high is here, the low is down here, so the low will basically be this wick here. Now, looking at the current time frame, the 4 hour, it's not really super clear. Now, for me, this wick stands out, and this wick here also stands out, but on the 4 hour, it's not super clear where to buy from. So what I've done is gone down to the lower time frames. Even on the 1 hour, it's still not super clear within most spaces. Now, for me, I think the 30-minute is the clearest. So going back here, so this wick here, which is a big sell volume before this actual breaker structure took place, it was caused by this whole move here, and then we've got this candle here with imbalance on it. So for me, if we are going to be seeing buys on Nzdusd, then this makes sense as a place where the demand will lie in the market. So if we are going to anticipate buys coming in based on that 4 hour structure, then I will be monitoring price as it gets into this area, and then we can look to buy away from there. Now, as well, we have got this lower down area, and if we look at the 15-minute, we can see that it's got a clear imbalance above it, which still hasn't been filled. So if we do see this area violated, but we're still looking for buys based on the 4 hour structure, then I will be happy buying out of that area there as the most extreme demand zone that I'd be happy to buy out of before this buy thesis gets invalidated. Yeah, so Nzdusd this week. Overall, I am just looking for sells following a reaction from this area up here, but I'm not ignoring the 4 hour structure, and since the 4 hour structure is bullish, I have identified two opportunities where we could potentially be looking for buys from. to follow that 4-hour structure, provided that that's what's going to end up following through. So that's Nzdusd this week. I mean, for me, really, it'd be much better if we could catch the sells, because if we are going to see that whole sell-off, then we're going to be catching the sells here, and that will take us all the way down for them few hundred pips, as opposed to buying on the 4-hour, which will be opposed by this whole supply zone here. But we've got to see what happens, and I think all the opportunities I've just discussed are perfectly valid. Alright, so moving on to AUD USD. So this is a bit more interesting now, because obviously we've got the high correlation between the Nzdusd and the AUD USD. However, on AUD USD, we have actually now seen that bullish break of structure. So we've seen the daily bias transition technically into a bullish structure. Now, for me, the actual daily trend is whatever the last two breaks of structure consecutively were. So considering that, we are still in a bearish trend on the daily based on this break of structure and then this break of structure here. But we have now seen that opposing bullish break of structure coming into the market. So, you know, based on that, it does look like we may be transitioning into bullish structure and we could just be looking for buys. So based on the fact that we are still in the bearish overall trend because of these two breaks, if we do see the 4-hour start to flip and we start to see, you know, on the 4-hour, we start to see a transition of structure to give us a bearish structural transition, then I will be happy to still look for sells following the 4-hour, just based on the fact that we still have all this volume from up here supporting the sells. But considering what's actually happening with the current structure, we do have that bullish break structure. So I think what makes the more sense right now, until we do see that structural transition on the 4-hour, is just to follow the daily structure looking for buys. So looking at the current daily structure, we've got the break of structure here. So this impulsive leg has broken this high here, which left behind this low. So our current daily trading range is from here down to here. Now, just going down time frames to get a clear picture of where our points of interest are going to be. For me, there's two clear points of interest. So we've got the extreme point of interest, which for me starts here because this is where the imbalance starts, and then I think it's fair for the price to come deeper and come down into this wick, so that's why I marked the whole area. So that for me is the extreme order block to follow the daily POI, to follow the daily bullish bias from this POI. So if we do get down there, then I'll be happy to take buys out of there following that. Now, based on the, I think it's for 1 hour. Let's just see. Alright, so based on basically the hourly structures, from a daily perspective, what we've got is this candle here, which is essentially a pause in this whole move before we actually do break the structure. So you could see this area here as the direct cause of the whole move. And if price is just going to continue quite aggressively, we might not see the retracement all the way down here. It might just come into this base and then continue. So that's why I've also marked this area on, which lines up with the current 4-hour range, and it's also this wick here. So this is essentially the 4-hour point of interest to continue the buys from. So for me this week on AU, really, like I say, if we do see that structural transition on the 4-hour, then I don't think there's anything wrong with following it to look for sells, because we are supported by an overall bearish trend on the daily. However, based on what's currently happening, my main interest going into the weeks for buys, and that's buys following away from either this 4-hour order block here, which is also a daily base, or from the daily extreme, which calls the most recent break structure. So for me, either of them opportunities are valid, and again, if we do see that transition, then I may look for sells. So that's AUD USD from my perspective this week. Alright, so Euro dollar, it's a pretty simple pair this week. So there does seem to be a bit of divergence between the euro dollar and then AU and NU, because euro dollar is just tanking as it looks like anyway. So, you know, maybe this is because of what's happening in Ukraine. Europe's obviously in Europe, which is going to be more affected by Ukraine than Australia and the New Zealand are. So that could be a reason for the divergence between AUD, USD, NZD and euro dollar. But what we've got on the euro dollar is just a simple downtrend. So we've got our first daily breaker structure here, which we looked at the last few weeks. Now, like I spoke about in my previous forecasts, I was looking at this area up here to sell away from, and that was followed through with to then break structure again on the daily, like I was talking about. So now we have actually broken structure again. We've got that 2 consecutive break structure confirming our bearish trend and confirming our bearish bias on euro dollar. So it's just a case now of where are we going to sell from. And for me, there's 2 clear areas to sell from. So we've got this whole area up here, which is the daily extreme order block. So this is the area, this order block here, which caused the whole move down, which broke the daily structure. So anywhere within that for me, you know, we've got imbalance there. So really anywhere within this area is absolutely perfect for sales from. And then we can either have a stop loss on the lower time frame structures, or we can have it above our sell thesis invalidation, and we can look to sell away from there. Now, what I'm also aware of though is we've got this lower time frame area here, and if we look at the 4 hour, what we've got is this area here for sells. So what we could see is price will just retrace, it'll come up into these areas, and then it'll just start to sell off from there without necessarily retracing all the way back up to the daily right now. So in terms of EU this week, it's literally a case of we'll sit on our hands until we do get up here, unless you're trading lower time frames, and then I'll watch how price reacts out of this area. If we do start to see that sell volume coming in, then I'll just look to follow sells out of this area. If, however, we do violate this structure here, I'll still be expecting the bearish bias based on the daily structure, and I'll be looking for sells out of this area up here. So that's EU this week. We're looking for sells, and it's just a case of where to look for sells from. Alright, so pound dollar. So pound dollar, we had a breaker structure to the high on the daily, which left behind this point of interest down here that I've discussed for the last few weeks. Now, this last week or so, the last couple of weeks, we have moved down from this 4 hour supply up here to then now bring us into this daily point of interest for buys. So for me, at this point, it does make sense that we could just see buys start to appear out of here with all the bullish volume which originally caused this move, pushing the price now to break structure again on the daily. So just following from the daily intent, I do think that that could make sense because we have seen this bullish break structure. We're now back inside the order block that caused it, so it makes sense that we could now see price moving up away from it. With that said though, however, what we did have before that was 2 consecutive breaks to the low. So technically, even though we are in, this bullish intent structure, we are still in a bearish overall trend on the daily. So that definitely adds support to bearish trades rather than bullish trades. So for me on GU this week, what I'm going to be aware of is this daily order block for buys, but what I'm going to be following is the 4 hour structure, and I'll probably be looking to trade really just for 4 hour and not getting too concerned about the current daily order block. So looking now at the 4 hour, what we've got is we've had a break structure here, a second breaker structure, and then we've had our third breaker structure. So what that essentially gives us now is this order flow invalidation line up here. So for me, I will expect some type of bullish volume out of this area just because it is a daily order block. And then whether it follows through or not is yet to be seen. But what I'll be looking at on the 4 hour is when we get up into this area here, which is the start of this imbalance, up until the 4 hour high, I'll be interested how price reacts off this area, and then I'll look for sells away from that area to then follow through breaking the daily again. Now, if we do see a large reaction from the daily and it breaks this area, I'll still be open to sells until we've broken this area here, because this is the order flow invalidation on the 4 hour due to the mitigation which took place there. And I do think it makes sense that price can come up, fill all this imbalance, appear to be following the daily trend, and then it will just end up going bearish following these two consecutive breaks here. So for me, on the 4 hour, we've got this area as a first area to sell from, we've got this area as a second area to sell from, and then also we have got that possibility that price will just come out of the daily and then just continue. But like I said, due to the fact that we do have the overall trend on the daily being bearish, I am more doubtful of the bearish thesis, but of the bullish thesis, sorry. But I will still be open to it, so we'll have to see what happens. But GE this week, there's basically three opportunities. There's the buy from the daily, there's sell from the 4 hour, and then there's the sell from the higher up 4 hour, which has the order flow invalidation. So let's see what happens with GE this week. Alright, so Euro Pound. Euro Pound, it seems to be reacting pretty well to my 2-day analysis from the last few weeks. So we have just literally followed through with basically the analysis I've put out from the 2-day for the last pretty much since back here, which was quite a few weeks ago now. Now at this point, I have been pointing out this liquidity on the weekly for quite a while. So we have now come below this liquidity. So, you know, considering that, there's definitely that possibility that we will just see a big move going up, basically to rebalance after price has come into this liquidity pool. So I'm definitely open to price now spiking since we've dipped into such a large liquidity pool, and that could happen. But this liquidity pool is no longer a target because, you know, we have violated it at this point. What we do still have though is this order block down here, which is actually the monthly order block, I believe. Yeah, so we've got this order block here, which is the monthly order block, and for me, even though we have now dipped below this liquidity, I do still think that price will be continuing downwards because it's got a reason to come into this monthly order block, and that's still another 300 pips away. So I will just be looking to follow the 2-day structure until we do get down to that monthly order block, and then we can decide what's going to happen from there. So looking at the 2-day structure now, and the only reason I'm using the 2-day is because it is just, in my opinion, a bit cleaner than the daily at the minute. So looking at the 2-day structure, we've had the break of structure here, which came from this order block here. So it's literally just a case of waiting for a retracement back up into this area, and then we'll look to follow the hourly time frames away from there, and then we can catch that sell on the way down, hopefully with a much smaller stop loss than 100 pips. So that's what I'm seeing on Euro Pound. It's really just a case of waiting for a retracement, and then we can look to come down. Alright, so finally we've got Pound Yen. So Pound Yen, the same as the Pound Dollar, we've got that bullish break of structure, which then we've got the order block at the low. Now, unlike Pound Dollar, Pound Yen's not quite made it into this order block yet. So for me, even within this bullish situation, I am still expecting that price is going to retrace deeper into this whole order block, and then it'll touch into the order block before then potentially moving away from it. So considering that, really in the shorter term, over the next few coming days, I will be expecting more downwards movement, and I think it's really for this week going to be a bearish bias on the pound yen. So looking at the 4 hour as to where we're going to go with this bearish bias, we've had the most recent break of structure. Now that could be seen to have either been caused by this extreme up here, which is where, you know, the most extreme orders sit and where the actual order block is. So for me, I'll be happy to look for sells out of there if we do get up there. But then what we've also got clearly is a substantial amount of buy volume there, which caused this base and this candle here. And that is what technically directly caused the break of structure. So for me, it also makes sense if price will come up into this area and then just start to react from it. Especially because if we are going to be going bullish down here, then it doesn't matter that there's a bit of imbalance left behind. So yeah, for me really, pound yen this week is just a case of following this 4 hour structure, and I'll be looking for sales out of there initially. If we do break that area, I'll be looking for sales out of there. And then obviously if we break the whole structure, I'll have to reassess the situation. But then on the daily, when we do get down into this area, I will be looking again for potential buys. But similar to GU, you know, if we're going to see GU start to melt down, then that will add a lot of doubt into this whole thesis, just because GU and GJ are pretty highly correlated. But we'll have to see what happens with both pairs. And this coming week, there's pretty much 3 opportunities that I'm looking at, and that's a buy from the daily, and then the sells from the 4-hour POIs. Alright guys, so that's it for this week, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel because I really appreciate that, and hopefully I can continue getting these forecasts out weekly again from now. So I hope you guys all have a safe trading week and stick to your trading plans, and thank you very much for watching. Cheers guys.